When Florida bartender Sandra Razzo was gunned down in her garage, police were baffled.
Sandy had no enemies. Everybody loved her.
But it wasn't long before her boyfriend identified a suspect.
While I was asking him questions about who would want to harm Sandra, it was almost like a light bulb went off in his head.
Tracy Humphrey was a bodybuilder with a shady past.
Looking at his history, going from police reports and criminal history, he seemed to have a pattern of violence.
He was also due to face Sandra in court on an assault charge in less than a month.
He was looking at 10 years in prison.
But he had an airtight alibi for the night of the shooting.
He was 30, 40 miles away at the time of the homicide.
But if not Tracy, then who? The mystery would lead to the unlikeliest of suspects.
Do you understand what you're being arrested for?
They said the murder of a woman, so I don't know.
An honor student with a tragic past and a bodybuilder with a history of violence. The question is, who pulled the trigger? In the VIP lounge of the Inferno, a Tampa nightclub. It was the perfect job for the vivacious fitness buff.
She was super duper nice, you know, she was very friendly.
She just had such a big heart. And if she thought she could help you in any way, she would do her best to try to help you.
She had recently struck up a friendship with a muscular bouncer new to the club, 35-year-old Timothy Humphrey. His friends all called him Tracy.
When I first met Tracy, well, the first thing I thought was, God, what a good-looking man. Very nice, very soft-spoken, charming, funny, you know. He was very intimidating.
Not only was Tracy intimidating, according to what he told friends, he also had a pretty impressive resume.
He said he modeled for Hugo Boss. You know, he played football for the Bucks.
Since he was new to the Inferno, Sandra had offered to help him meet some people and get his bearings.
She was trying to help him meet new people, make new friends.
But Timothy took her friendliness and generosity as something else. And before long, he was asking her out.
You know, and he just didn't want to take no for an answer.
On the evening of February 22nd, 2002, 4 months after they'd met, Sandra alleged that Tracy crossed the line. According to what Sandra told police, after giving her a ride home from work, Tracy invited himself in. Then, he assaulted her.
She alleged he raped her and beat her up. He would not let her leave, wouldn't let her go to work, wouldn't let her see her friends.
Finally, Sandra convinced him to let her go.
She had plans to fly up to Pennsylvania, so he drove her to the airport. When he dropped her off at the airport, she called a friend to say what happened, and that friend, you know, helped her contact law enforcement.
He was arrested and charged with assault. But Sandra Razzo would never get her day in court. There was a lot more to Tracy than she or anyone else realized.
Due to his past record, he was looking at an enhancement as a habitual offender and looking at 10 years in prison.
And Tracy Humphrey had been in prison before. He was determined never to go back.
He would tell people that he'd die before he'd go back to prison again.
As Tracy's court date approached, he left the Inferno and began working at a health club in the Tampa bedroom community of Brandon. In September of 2002, he met 19-year-old Ashley Laney, who came in one day looking to sign up for a trial membership.
I was the fitness director, and I used to help with sales, so they asked me to come in and talk to her and tell her about the gym and tell her about what I would do for her to help her. So I did, and we kind of immediately developed a rapport.
But Ashley had troubles of her own. Her father was in jail for sexual battery by the time she was born in 1982. And because her mother had problems with substance abuse, Ashley was raised largely by her grandmother. Growing up in Brandon, Ashley was a bright child and managed to stay out of trouble.
Her father was in prison. Her mother was an alcoholic. However, with Ashley herself, she was a very good student in school.
But when Ashley's grandmother died while Ashley was a senior in high school, things started to fall apart. She still managed to graduate with honors, but dropped out of college her first year. She took a job at Planet Smoothie in a local strip mall, which was across the street from the gym where Tracy Humphrey worked.
She went in there and, they started talking and they became friends.
The two hit it off, but Tracy wasn't completely honest with Ashley. He had lied about his past to other friends, and he told those same lies to Ashley.
Here's a guy who, basically would tell all these lies that he had been a star player in the Rose Bowl, that he had once played for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, that he modeled underwear in Italy. He had all these grand stories.
After a few training sessions, the 35-year-old weightlifter asked the teenager out to dinner.
Even though he was very overpowering in his physical image and intimidating that way, he talked very sensitive and just made you believe that he was a very soft, gentle person.
Soon, they were seeing each other regularly.
She was a real good friend with benefits, but she didn't push me like everybody else was. They wanted exclusivity, and she did too, but she didn't push it.
We became kind of sex buddies. He was dating other women, and I was dating other guys, but I was monogamous in the bed with him.
She was young and impressionable. She absolutely adored him, and she would and did do anything for him that he wanted her to do.
But Ashley had no idea that her new sex buddy had been in and out of prison for the past 15 years.
He was from Iowa, and he got involved in criminal activity when he moved here to Florida. And he was in and out, trouble with the law, had done some time in state prison.
A significant portion of his prior record was violence aimed at women.
Ashley also didn't know that he was facing current charges related to the alleged battery of Sandra Razzo. By early 2003, Ashley Laney had quit her job at Planet Smoothie and was working with Tracy at the athletic club. Still unaware of Tracy's past, Ashley began dating him exclusively. She confided to her hairdresser that she was happier than ever.
She did tell me that she felt like she finally found someone who understood her. And this whole time I was thinking, poor thing.
In March, Ashley moved in with Tracy.
It was at that point that I felt the need to give her a heads up, if you will, about the situation with Sandy and just about me. I didn't want that sneaking up on me, so I just came clean.
Tracy claimed he was totally innocent and that Sandra made the whole thing up to get back at him for dating other women.
He told her these things, and she bought it hook, line, and sinker.
And according to Ashley, Tracy also told her he would do anything to avoid going back to prison.
Tracy really pounded into her head that they couldn't be together anymore if he was sent to prison, and that he would do anything. They even talked about a suicide pact at one time. He talked about going on the lam.
Tracy always said how he would commit suicide before he go to prison. He's like, I am never going to prison again.
In the summer of 2003, after a fight over an alleged affair Tracy was having at work, Ashley left and went to her mother's house. Tracy followed her there.
So I went home, I started telling her everything. When I'm in the middle of the story, Tracy pulls up to the house. And my mom was like, please don't go out there, please don't go out there, I'm gonna call the police.
But the police were never called, and Tracy and Ashley reconciled.
He said, I promise you won't have to do this, just come back, we'll work something out. I can't live without you.
I came to realize, I don't think I'm gonna find this again, or do I wanna keep looking when I have this wonderful girl? So I jumped in. I asked her to marry me.
Rather than an engagement ring, the couple went for something more permanent.
I had just gotten his tattoo, his name on my back, and he had gotten my name on his back.
On July 4th, Less than a year after they met, Tracy Humphrey and Ashley Laney were married at the gym.
He said, when do you want your wedding date to be? And I said, well, how about July 4th? You know, it'd be cool to have fireworks on our anniversary. So we had our papers notarized, and that was the extent of our wedding. We were both training clients, and we were having our papers notarized. And that night, we went out to dinner at the Cheesecake Factory.
Dinner the next night for the newlyweds would be even more modest, ordered-in pizza. But as police would soon discover, that dinner would turn out to be far more significant. At 10:30 p.m. on July 5th, Sandra Razzo ended her shift at the Green Iguana, where she had gone to work after leaving the Inferno. She hopped in her BMW and headed for her apartment in Pinellas Park, Florida, about a half-hour's drive away. Her boyfriend, Tony Ponacall, was home waiting for her.
He had gone to bed early. He said he heard something like fireworks. He didn't think anything about it. And then after a while, he thought, well, Stan should have been home. Where is she?
Tony went downstairs to look for her around 11:15. When he opened the door to the garage, he saw that her car was in it. But something was horribly wrong.
He ran over to the car, and she was slumped over the seat. And he wasn't sure exactly because he was so upset. He didn't know what it was. And he picked up her cell phone, he called 911.
When I first got there, I was briefed by the patrol sergeant who was working. He and the officers that were there said there was a shooting.
He would soon learn it was more than a shooting. It was a murder. Coming up, police soon identify a suspect. The only problem is, he has an airtight alibi.
The first shock that I got was when the pizza guy told me he did deliver the pizza there. He did deal with a person whose physical description matched Tracy Humphrey.
At a little after 11 p.m. on July 5th, 2003, police and paramedics were called to an apartment in Pinellas Park, Florida. Inside the garage, they found 37-year-old Sandra Razzo slumped in the driver's seat of her BMW.
The driver's side window was smashed, and then inside the vehicle, especially on the passenger side seat and floorboard, there was a lot of blood, and then also on the driver's seat up toward the top, there was also good amounts of blood.
By the time Detective Golzewski arrived at the scene, Sandra had already been rushed to the hospital. At 12:04 a.m., she was officially pronounced dead.
She was shot in the head, which would have been a fatal wound, and she had 3 other bullet wounds to her upper torso. There was 1 shot in her foot, and I believe 1 or 2 in her leg.
She was so shot up, we had to have a closed casket. She would not have wanted anybody to see her like that.
All told, she'd been shot 8 times. Police secured the crime scene and began collecting evidence.
We did recover multiple shell casings. There was some blood at the scene. Initially, we didn't know what that was, who that was going to lead to, but the shell casings would probably be the most critical at the scene.
They determined the shells were fired from a .22 caliber weapon, most likely a pistol.
It was a .22 caliber gun. It was a semi-automatic, which would have ejected the shell casings.
But the question was, who would want to kill Sandra Razzo?
You'd have to be pretty cold-hearted to walk up to someone, not only shoot him 1 time, but shoot him 8 times.
As soon as we can, we start interviewing people who know our victim, and that usually will lead us in a direction of potential suspects.
As crime techs continued to work the scene, detectives sat down with Sandra's distraught boyfriend.
He and I sat down at his table, and it was almost like a light bulb went off in his head when I was asking him questions about who would want to harm Sandra.
Family members told the detective about Sandra's upcoming court date with Tracy Humphrey. The trial was set to begin August 4th, almost exactly 1 month from the day of the murder.
And I told him about the incident that happened, and that Sandy had been threatened, that he threatened to kill her and all of her family.
That was the person, if anyone wanted to harm Sandra, it would be him.
The next morning, police began a background check on Tracy Humphrey.
We subpoena a lot of records in a case like this when we have suspects who are, I would say, lack of a better term, that's viable, that appear to have some connection, credit records, bank records, cell phone records.
They confirmed that not only had Tracy been arrested for the battery of Sandra Razzo, he had also served jail time for similar charges against other women.
Looking at his history, going from police reports and criminal history, he seemed to have a pattern of violence.
He was looking at a felony crime, and he was looking at a potential prison sentence as a result of that. Because of the prior criminal conduct, we decided to take a look at his possible involvement.
On Monday, July 7th, police made the 40-mile drive from Pinellas Park to Brandon.
We went over to Hillsborough County, where Tracy Humphrey was living, and knocked on the door, left a card on the door, and asked that Tracy Humphrey call me in reference to a case I was working.
Tracy called back and left a message to meet him later at the gym. But when the detectives got there, Tracy refused to talk.
He told me that he had an attorney for the battery case, and the attorney advised him not to talk to anyone about Miss Razzo's death.
During the course of the record search, the police also learned that Tracy had recently been married.
We learned that he had been married the day before the homicide to Ashley. And so we proceeded to try and interview Ashley, who was at home that same day that they had tried to talk to Tracy.
We asked her about the weekend in question. She told us she had gotten married on July 4th, which was the day before the homicide. I asked her if she went on a honeymoon, if they were out of town, did they do anything, and she told me they basically stayed local and went to a beach.
Then the detectives asked her about the next night, the night that Sandra Razzo was gunned down in her garage.
We were able to get statements from her that they were home that night, that had ordered pizza, they had a friend over.
Her friend, Toby White, was over, and she gave me a phone number and a cell phone and a home number to reach Toby White.
But midway through the interview, Tracy came home and abruptly ended the questioning.
He was so mad his head was purple. I mean, red and purple. That's how upset he was. And, he just didn't want her talking to us at all. So that was about all I got from that interview.
It wasn't much, but as Detective Golzewski left the Humphreys' apartment, he got the sense that he was onto something.
I knew she had knowledge of something that had happened. Now it's all about building the case around like a thought and a suspicion. So the first thing I did was try to destroy their alibis.
The first alibi checked out. The pizza shop had a credit card receipt from Tracy Humphrey from right around the time of the murder. And the delivery guy was able to identify him from a photo.
Now I'm thinking, how could he have committed a homicide if we've got a pizza guy who's gonna say he was, 30, 40 miles away at the time of the homicide?
Next, police contacted Toby White to get her to confirm Tracy's other alibi.
They initially called me and stated that they were under the impression that I was with Tracy the night of the murder and that they would need to talk to me about that.
Toby agreed to meet with them the next day.
When I went in to train that night, Tracy said, no, you're not going to talk to them without a lawyer present. And I called them back and said that I could not talk to them without the lawyer, and therefore they said, well, we'll have to do an actual deposition then instead of just an interview.
White gave her deposition a few weeks later.
I told them I went over to Tracy's at about 8:30 and was over there until about 12:30 or 1 in the morning.
She was able to confirm that she was at the house and they were both there.
With both alibis confirmed, police were at a dead end. If Tracy Humphrey didn't kill Sandra Razzo, who did?
At that point, we didn't know what to think. Sandy had no enemies. Everybody loved her.
There was nobody else that we knew that really would want her deceased, although we looked at pretty much anybody she knew and tried to establish that information.
We followed up on all different leads. Basically could find nobody that wanted her dead, and her family kept bringing up his name.
Police were convinced that they were on the right track, and they would just have to find another way to prove it. Coming up, the truth behind a secret relationship is revealed.
I asked him, does she know about us? And he said no.
And undercover surveillance leads to a shocking revelation.
I don't even remember if I said she was back there when the pizza was delivered or not.
She wasn't.
In September of 2003, the Pinellas Park, Florida Police Department was investigating the murder of 37-year-old Sandra Razzo. Their chief suspect was bodybuilder Tracy Humphrey, whom Sandra had accused of sexual assault the year before. But Tracy had an alibi. He was home ordering a pizza. And one of his clients, Toby White, claimed she was with both Tracy and his wife Ashley that night.
We knew at that time that he could not have been the person who had pulled the trigger, but we felt that he still had an interest or a desire in wanting to see her dead.
With Tracy's alibi apparently airtight, police were at a dead end. That is, until they subpoenaed Tracy and Ashley's cell phone records. It was the break they were looking for. The phone records showed that Tracy Humphrey may have been home at the time of the murder, but Ashley wasn't.
Tracy's cell phone was pinging off of the tower by his house, and Ashley's cell phone was pinging off the tower right by where Miss Razzo worked, all the way up until the time Miss Razzo came off duty. And we were able to determine the cell phone towers were getting closer and closer to Pinellas Park.
And then, just minutes after Sandra's murder, a tower less than a mile from her apartment picked up a call from Ashley's cell phone to Tracy's, 20 miles away.
The police were able to get cell phone tower records to sort of place Ashley at Sandy's home when the murder occurred.
But what about Toby White's statement that both Humphreys were home the whole night? A few days after she gave her deposition, White contacted police and said she wanted to meet with them again.
I proceeded to tell them what was going on, that I was lying, but I was terrified. I didn't know what I was going to do.
White told police she knew nothing about Sandra's murder, and she wasn't even at their house that night like she claimed. She said Tracy had come to her the next day and asked her to provide him with an alibi.
He said, I really don't know what I'll have to do if you don't go along with this. I won't be left with a lot of options. It scared me half to death.
Police asked her if she'd be willing to wear a wire and tape conversations between Tracy and Ashley. She agreed to do it. Police also spoke to David Abernathy, Ashley's mother's boyfriend, who told them that Ashley had borrowed a gun from him a few weeks before the shooting, claiming she needed it for protection and had not returned it. The gun was a semi-automatic .22 caliber Ruger pistol.
He actually loaned her a gun that was the same caliber and same type of strike that our shell casings had.
By December, between the cell phone records, the surveillance tape, and the gun, police felt they had enough evidence to arrest Ashley Humphrey. But they still believed that Tracy was behind the murder.
We knew we had to arrest both of them. He, to me, was a flight risk. He would have left Ashley on a dime and gotten out of there had we arrested her for the homicide.
And according to what police had learned from the surveillance tape, Tracy knew that the net was closing in on Ashley. Investigators had to move fast. In going through Tracy's credit card records, police found a charge from a local shooting range.
I was able to talk with the people that work at the shooting range who were able to inform me Tracy Humphrey was handling the gun, was showing Ashley how to load it.
Handling a gun was a violation of Tracy's parole.
Timothy Humphrey was a convicted felon. We had that he had been at a gun range handling ammunition and handling a firearm.
Investigators still didn't have enough evidence to charge Tracy Humphrey with murder, but they could take him into custody for a parole violation while they continued to build their case. On December 18, 2004, Ashley and Tracy Humphrey were at work.
I was cleaning the windows, and I remembered about 8 squad cars pulled up into the driveway, and I could see them all in the reflection of the glass door that I was cleaning. And I was like, oh my God.
The police approached Ashley first.
And they're like, is your husband here? And I said, yes, he is. And I'm like, okay, he's getting arrested. So it still hasn't hit me that I'm getting arrested too.
Tracy and Ashley Humphrey were handcuffed and taken to the police station. When investigators sat Ashley down in an interrogation room, she refused to talk.
Do you understand what you're being arrested for?
They said the murder of a woman that I don't know. So
Okay.
it's just a little frightening to know that I'm being arrested for.
Okay. Well,
So I want my
just,
attorney.
you are going to be extradited back over to Pinellas County, and you'll have to answer to the charge of murder in the first degree.
Get my attorney.
What do you mean, get him?
I mean, bring him here.
For what reason?
I'm not speaking. I didn't do this. I'm not speaking without my attorney.
I think 23 times she said, I want my lawyer, I want my lawyer. I jokingly said to my co-counsel, this should be the tape we show all of our clients in how to handle a police interrogation. I don't know if I've ever seen a client handle a police interrogation as well as she did.
For the next several hours, Ashley refused to speak to the investigators. That evening, she was read her rights and transported to the Pinellas County Jail.
So they finally booked me, and it was like, okay, I'll just gotta make it through till Monday when I can get out.
When Ashley finally met with her attorney Monday morning, the reality of the situation still hadn't sunk in. Her attorney, however, knew exactly how serious it was.
This is a capital felony. Upon conviction as charged, there's only 2 possibilities. There's life without parole and there's death. And either way, you die in prison.
She also knew that the state really wanted to connect Tracy Humphrey to the murder, but didn't yet have enough evidence. She figured prosecutors might be willing to make a deal in Ashley's case. But first, she'd have to convince her to betray her husband.
You don't fall out of love with somebody the minute you're in jail. She loved him. She loved him. And he was the most important person in her life.
But Ashley was about to find out that nearly everything Tracy Humphrey had told her since they met was a lie. In February, Ashley's attorneys came to her with information that made her start to realize who her husband really was.
They finally were just like, do you know that he's lied to you? He was never a football player, and do you know that he was never a model for Armani?
They also told Ashley about a number of his former girlfriends who had accused him of abuse and violence.
You have this manipulative schemer who lies about his background, who has just got a terrible history of treating women.
But it was Tracy's alleged history with men that finally broke her down. According to a sworn statement from Ashley's hairdresser, her husband was bisexual.
The deposition they showed me was his extracurricular activities with men. Do you know that, he's been bisexual and your hairdresser is his gay lover?
Ashley had no idea. Hector said he had been sworn to secrecy by Tracy.
I asked him, does she know about us? And he said no. And he goes, and I don't want her to know. I said, okay. So I knew by the way she acted that she had no idea. She just thought I was a gay friend of his, that we were really close friends.
My brainwashing started coming down. They opened my eyes. My attorneys opened my eyes.
Ashley finally agreed to let her attorneys approach the state with an offer to testify against her husband in return for a lesser sentence.
We sat down with the decision makers in the state attorney's office, which is a very nerve-wracking event for a defense attorney because you've now told them that your client's guilty of homicide.
We all decided uniformly that we wanted to find out what she had to say.
And when Ashley sat down with them on March 2nd, what she had to say would completely blow them away. Coming up, Ashley tells prosecutors the shocking secrets behind the murder of Sandra Razzo.
He told me that she would have a different look when, you know, like her soul was gone.
On March 2nd, after refusing to talk for 3 months, Ashley Humphrey sat down to meet with prosecutors. She'd agreed to testify against her husband in return for a reduced sentence for the murder of Sandra Razzo. But first, they wanted to hear what she had to say. Ashley told prosecutors that her husband, Tracy, had indeed been the mastermind of the plot to kill Sandra Razzo. She explained that on the night of the murder, the plan was for her to ambush Sandra when she left work at the Green Iguana.
I had brown contacts, I had black face paint, my hair was secured in a bun and hidden under a hat. At a quick glance, I looked like a skinny black man.
But after sitting in the parking lot for hours, waiting for Sandra to come out, she had her chance.
So I was like, well, she's getting in her car. So I turned my car on, I followed her out of the parking lot, I started following her. I called Tracy, I told him that it was gonna be over in a few minutes.
She followed Sandra all the way to her home, keeping in constant contact with Tracy on her cell phone, just as the records had indicated. When Sandra pulled into her garage, Ashley knew she had a choice to make.
I was like, well, if I don't do this, he's gonna be very mad.
The lawyers and detectives sat in stunned silence as she calmly described what she did next.
It was surreal. It was like I was in a dream. So I turned on the safety and I shot at the window and I could hear her screaming. And I started shooting her, and I remembered that he had drilled into my head, you have to aim for, you know, a vital organ or something, because the bullets are so small that it's not gonna kill her, and we don't want her talking on the hospital bed.
She was shot in the foot, she was shot in the head and torso and other parts of her body. Ashley shoots, gets back in the car, and drives away from the scene and then contacts Tracy by phone.
Then, Ashley said something that took the authorities completely by surprise.
All that was going through my head was his wrath if I didn't do it, because of the first time that I didn't do it, it was, you know, he was very mean.
Detectives were stunned when Ashley mentioned a first time. She told the officials gathered around the table that a little over a month before she killed Sandra Razzo, she had tried and failed, that time with a high-powered rifle equipped with a sight.
I was inside of my VW, and I had the rifle with a pair of jeans around the barrel so that nobody would really see it. When I saw her and went to aim at her, I thought that the barrel was on top of my side mirror, but it was actually right through the side mirror. I shot a bullet through it.
Sandra ducked when she heard the mirror explode, but she never realized she was being shot at.
She was like looking around like, what in the hell? And while she's doing that, I'm trying to shoot at her again, but the gun had jammed.
I do recall a couple of times looking over at a couple of the law enforcement officers that were present for the interrogation. At one point, one of them kind of dropped his pencil like, geez, I can't even believe this.
Ashley explained to detectives that almost from the time they met, Tracy had been pushing her to take care of the Sandra Razzo problem.
Every day he was like, you gotta work on it, you gotta work on it. You know, if you don't do this, you're gonna leave. I'm kicking you out.
He would prey on her weakness, which was she loved him. She wanted to spend her whole life with him.
After hearing Ashley's story and confirming that she was telling the truth, the prosecutors agreed to reduce her sentence to 25 years if she would plead guilty to second-degree murder and testify against her husband.
But for Timothy Humphrey, Sandra Rosa would be alive today. Ashley did the killing, however, she did the killing at his request, at his urging, and therefore we wanted to make sure that he was held responsible for this act too.
I wanted him. He's the one. If it wouldn't have been for him, this would not have happened.
On March 20th, 2004, Tracy Humphrey, who was being held without bail for the weapons charge, was informed that he had been indicted for first-degree murder.
I was upset, I was angry, and then it was just always counting on the fact that, well, I'm innocent. I'm innocent. And I got that.
His trial would begin on February 14, 2006, Valentine's Day. On February 20th, Ashley took the stand to testify against him. It was the first time she had seen her husband since the day they were arrested more than 2 years earlier.
He shrank. He wasn't on steroids anymore. He had changed so much that it was just a shock to see him. I think I weighed more than him by the time we got to trial. I had gotten fat and he had gotten very skinny.
Ashley began by calmly taking the jury through the events leading up to Sandra Rozzo's murder.
The courtroom was completely silent. I think everybody was zoned in on exactly what she had to say.
The most dramatic testimony came when she took the jury through the details of the murder.
Shot her repeatedly till I thought she was dead. And I looked in her eyes and she was dead.
You hear about this stuff on TV, but it just adds a whole different element when someone is sitting face to face with you and basically explaining how they were able to do something like this.
But it was perhaps the final detail that had the most effect on the courtroom.
When it was done, she described in pretty good detail how she leaned into the vehicle to check to see that Sandra was actually dead.
He had coached me to look into her eyes and make sure she was dead, not to leave before she was dead. And he told me that she would have a different look when, like her soul was gone. So I do remember looking her in the eyes, and I will never get that memory out of my mind.
3 days later, after the prosecution backed up Ashley's story with the physical evidence, Tracy Humphrey took the stand. He claimed that the entire thing was Ashley's idea and that he had nothing to do with it.
The first thing that she said was, what if she doesn't come to court? And I said that I kind of hope that's what happens. And then she said, well, what if somebody kept her from coming to court? And that was the first time that I said to her, don't ever even joke like that. That's not funny.
The next day, Friday, February 24th, both sides rested their case and turned the decision over to the jury.
I felt pretty confident about it, but you still get the butterflies, you still worry, no matter what, with the jury system.
Coming up, the jury reaches its verdict.
I was in a room by myself, and my attorney came 11 minutes after the verdict was announced, and she had tears in her eyes.
On February 24th, 2006, the jury in the first-degree murder trial of Florida versus Timothy Humphrey announced it had reached a verdict. Jurors had deliberated for just over 2 hours.
The verdict, it was unanimous. Everybody thought that he was guilty.
I will sentence you to the Department of Corrections for the rest of your natural life. Have no possibility of parole.
He didn't have much of a reaction at all that I recall. He just pretty much sat there stone-faced. Couldn't really read any emotion on his face, no shock or anything like that.
Ashley learned about the verdict in a holding cell at the Pinellas County Jail.
My attorney came 11 minutes after the verdict was announced. And she had tears in her eyes, and she said, they found him guilty, and she was very happy for me, and we both cried.
2 weeks later, Ashley was sentenced to 25 years in prison. As per the deal, on the morning of March 3rd, 1995, 25-year-old 911 operator Lynn Turner found herself on the wrong end of an emergency call. She had just discovered her husband, police officer Glenn Turner, lying dead on the couple's bed.
The medical examiner told me that, he'd had an enlarged heart.
Just 4 days after her husband's unexpected death, Lynn Turner sought refuge in the arms of another man on the force.
Randy worked with the Forsyth County Sheriff's Office. As a deputy, she was very possessive of Randy.
7 years later, Randy's life also ended tragically.
Co-worker who was at the fire station got there. When Randy didn't respond at all to knocks, yells, then he forced his way in, and it was there that he discovered Randy. Randy was already dead.
The coincidence left many people wondering if Lynn Turner was the unfortunate widow of 2 fallen cops, or a black widow preying on men in uniform. By a well-off family in Cumming, Georgia.
Lynn's parents had saved money all their life. They had made some good investments in land and that sort of thing, and they did have some money.
Lynn's family also had connections in the legal community. After a couple of years in junior college, Lynn landed a job with a local attorney.
Lynn was a very bright girl, didn't have a college degree, but certainly adapted well to to the jobs that she had.
That was especially true in 1991 when Lynn went to work for nearby Cobb County as a 911 dispatcher. The new job allowed Lynn to mix and mingle with lots of handsome young police officers.
And I'm not saying that we were studs or nothing, by no means. We just had a lot of, the cops always tracked a lot of females.
And in Lynn's case, vice versa. Lynn was a popular fixture at local cop bars like Confetti and the Crystal Chandelier.
Lynn was very flashy. She always had a flashy car. She always had plenty of money for whatever. When there was a time for money to be spent, she had it to spend.
And at closing time, it wasn't uncommon for Lynn to leave on the arm of one of Cobb County's finest. Her late-night antics were legendary among the guys on the force, especially since many of them shared apartments and would occasionally run into her. One night in particular stood out.
You could see down the hallway there was a light coming out of a bedroom. This figure stepped out, very shapely. You could tell that even in the dark, that light had 2 pistols in his hand. And you could tell it was a female.
It was Lynn. And though she was only a police dispatcher, she was known to carry a gun. Lynn dated a string of different officers, but no one seriously until 1992, when she zeroed in on a cop named Glenn Turner. Known to his buddies on the force as Buddha, Glenn Turner was a stocky local boy who enjoyed his job and the party scene surrounding it.
We loved to go out, loved to go to the clubs, chase the girls. We love that.
Just a big teddy bear, an easygoing guy. Glenn trusted everybody, especially off duty.
On a hot night in 1992, Glenn was out to dinner with a group of friends when Lynn Womack sat down at the table.
It started out as, let's just put it this way, to be pleasant, a one-night stand.
That may have been how it started, but before long, Lynn told Glenn she wanted more. Glenn's pals on the force were dumbfounded when, after less than a year of dating, Glenn announced he was ready to give up his carefree bachelor lifestyle.
He flipped open his left breast pocket to his uniform, and of course when I saw that black velvet box, I knew what it was. I'm like, evil. I'm just thinking, oh no. He flipped it over and said, we're going to get married. I said, you lost your damn mind.
I knew she had seen other people in the department and that she slept around, but there's nothing you could tell Glenn that was going to change his mind.
Despite his friends' reservations, the couple married on August 21st, 1993.
You could just tell it was trouble. We were already placing bets on it, the day of the wedding.
Glenn moved into Lynn's house at 881 Old Farm Walk in Marietta. His policeman's salary, while modest, was a big help when it came time to pay the mortgage. And since Glenn was a cop, Lynn insisted she be listed on his life insurance policy.
He was going to change his insurance beneficiary from me to Lynn. I thought, that sounded so strange. It sounded just like she was standing over his back and saying, "You've got to do this."
But before long, the young couple started having money troubles.
Lynn unfortunately had what my parents used to refer to as champagne taste on a beer budget.
Glenn took a second job at a gas station, working weekends while Lynn dined out and traveled with friends. One of those friends was a Forsyth County Sheriff's deputy and volunteer fireman named Randy Thompson. In the fall of 1993, just weeks after her wedding day, Lynn had met Randy while visiting home in Forsyth County.
Lynn had been over here in Cumming and ran into Randy.
Over the next couple months, while Glenn worked 3 jobs to keep up with the bills in Marietta, Lynn started spending a lot more time 40 miles away in Cumming.
She started coming down here during the week, every weekend, spending an awful lot of time down here.
Rumors of Lynn's affairs circulated back to Cobb County, but Glenn's friends and family shielded him from the whispers.
I had heard suspicions that she was having an affair with a police officer, rumors in Forsyth County, but at the time, no. I mean, I didn't have any hard facts that she was seeing anybody over there, just certain people, just suspicion.
Meanwhile, Glenn continued working around the clock, trying to stay ahead of the bills.
He was 30 days away from being debt-free. She was turning around and using them to finance her lifestyle with her new lover.
Glenn worked, as he told me, he'd worked 365 days without a day off.
Fortunately, there did appear to be a light at the end of the tunnel. Lynn told Glenn that she would soon be coming into a large sum of money.
After her grandmother died, she's going to get $100,000 out of the inheritance. And I think that just looked good to him, to know that there would be some money coming in and they would be fixed up for a while.
Lynn would be coming into a large sum of money soon, but it wouldn't be from a wealthy grandmother. On February 28, 1995, Glenn awoke feeling feverish and called in sick.
The doctor said, I think you got a virus. Something like that. 24, 48 hours, you'll be all right. Sent him home, discharged him.
Surprisingly, Lynn made time to play nurse for her sick husband. She plied him with soup, Jell-O, and sweet tea, but after a few days in bed, his symptoms only grew worse.
Officer Turner was hallucinating, and he got up on the balcony and was wanting to fly off of the balcony, and then he was thirsty, wanted to run downstairs and drink gas. And
the next morning, he was fine. He got up and drank some stuff, ate some stuff, some Jell-O. She went to run some errands. She came back about 1:30, 2 o'clock.
But when Lynn returned, she found Glenn sprawled out on the bed, not breathing. Lynn dialed 911, and over their radios, Glenn's colleagues received an alert no cop wants to hear. Officer down. By around 2 p.m. on March 3, 1995, Glenn and Lynn Turner's home was overrun with police officers rushing to the aid of one of their own. Tragically, there was nothing they could do. 31-year-old Glenn Turner was dead. Being cops, Glenn's friends were immediately suspicious, especially in light of what they suspected about his wife's extracurricular activities and excessive spending habits.
Glenn had told me that she was ringing the credit cards back up again, and all of a sudden now he's dead, and I'm thinking life insurance? I mean, I could just see her doing that.
But a Cobb County Police Department investigation concluded that Glenn Turner had died of natural causes.
Well, it was his heart. He had an enlarged heart, and it just quit.
Glenn's friends had no choice but to drop the matter and mourn the loss of their friend.
I took their word. They're the professionals. I've been around them for years. I said, okay, I guess I'm wrong. My gut was still churning.
As for Lynn, she didn't exactly play the grieving widow. 4 days after the funeral, Lynn put the Marietta house on the market and moved into an apartment with Randy Thompson in Cumming. There, she used family connections to land a good job with the Forsyth County District Attorney's Office. She also collected on Glenn's $100,000 life insurance policy, even though she told Randy she was divorced, not widowed. In 1995, Lynn announced she was pregnant.
Lynn was pregnant with their first child, and then they moved into a house that she bought. While they lived there, they had a second child, a son.
The couple never married, but that didn't stop Lynn from treating Randy like a henpecked husband.
She was very dominating, very controlling, and when she spoke, whatever it was, she expected Randy to jump.
The relationship struggled along for a few years, but it was clear to everyone it was going nowhere.
It would be on again, off again. Even once they split up and Randy moved out, they still stayed in contact with each other.
On January 19, 2001, Lynn suggested the couple have dinner at the Longhorn Steakhouse in Alpharetta to see if they could work things out. They later went back to the house for dessert. The next morning, Randy awoke at his apartment with severe flu symptoms.
When I got there, he was just kind of in another world, but he was very sick. He was vomiting a lot, just kind of in and out, kind of with us and then not with us.
Randy was going downhill fast.
Sunday afternoon, Lynn said she went by and carried him some food, some chicken soup, and then Monday morning they found him dead.
Just like Glenn's death, Lynn took it pretty well.
She did not act like she was grieving, but Lynn was a very, she always set off, that she was a very strong person. She was, she stuffed a lot of things. So, that was how I took it. She was just stuffing that morning.
It didn't take long for news of Randy's death to reach Glenn's friends and family up in Cobb County.
I slammed my hand down on the desk, and I knew it.
None of us slept that night after hearing that, and then's when my mind started rolling. She had to do something. Lynn had to be the one that did it.
Glenn's mother contacted Randy's mother, and they discovered their sons' deaths shared striking similarities.
Kathy and I started comparing notes about Glenn's death and Randy's death, and everything was so much the same. The illness, the way they were sick.
Family and friends of both men pleaded with authorities to investigate these two eerily similar deaths. In May 2001, the Cobb County DA's office officially reopened the investigation into the death of Glenn Turner. Among the first things that caught investigators' eyes was a photo taken in the Turners' garage at the time of Glenn's death.
There was a can of antifreeze right next to that gas can. When I took a picture of that gas can, that antifreeze, of course, shows up, but I didn't think nothing about it. I mean, it was a garage, and you're going to have things like that in your garage.
But antifreeze also contains a poison called ethylene glycol, which is known to cause flu-like symptoms similar to those both Glenn and Randy suffered before they died. Then, investigators learned that not long before Glenn's death, Lynn had inquired at a local animal shelter about the effects of ingesting ethylene glycol.
Lynn had called up there asking about poisons and stuff, about as far as what it would take to kill different animals and stuff.
At that point, then made some phone calls, and the eventual outcome was that Mr. Turner was exhumed.
A new autopsy was performed on Glenn, and when the results were released, investigators' suspicions were confirmed.
The medical examiner here, after he has exhumed the body, found the ethylene glycol, issued another death certificate which shows that the death is homicide.
On November 1st, 2002, Lynn Turner was charged with the first-degree murder of her husband, Glenn.
Lynn, you say people are calling you a murderer, is that true?
Coming up, the prosecution has 2 dead cops, but no smoking gun. On April 26, 2004, Lynn Turner's trial began in Houston County, Georgia. 9 years after the death of her husband, Glenn. She was also a suspect in the 2001 death of her boyfriend, Randy Thompson. Defense attorneys had been successful in moving the trial to a different county due to all the pretrial publicity.
There was a high percentage that had already formed an opinion, and the potential juror said, well, I think she's as guilty as homemade sin.
But in an early victory for the prosecution, the judge agreed to allow Randy Thompson's death to be brought up in this trial.
We pointed out to him some 23 different similarities of the Randy Thompson case and the Glenn Turner case.
In their opening statement, the prosecution told the jury that Lynn murdered her husband for 2 reasons. The first had to do with her affair with Randy Thompson.
And the state believes the evidence will show that Randy Thompson is a part of the motive for the murder of Glenn Turner.
The other part of the motive was financial. Lynn's claim of a coming financial windfall, according to the prosecution, was true. But the money wasn't coming from her grandmother. It was coming from her husband's life insurance policy.
What we found was that Lynn Turner stood to gain financially from the death of Glenn Turner.
The state then told the jury that Lynn had killed her husband by spiking Jell-O, soup, and sweet tea with ethylene glycol-rich antifreeze.
Ethylene glycol is reported as having a sweet taste to it. And so ethylene glycol can be hidden in a number of foods or drinks that have a sweet taste, like tea, or I think Jell-O was brought up at the trial, or could be put in small amounts in a variety of different foods.
Experts on poison testified that evidence of possible ethylene glycol poisoning was found in both Glenn's and Randy's kidneys.
Byproducts of ethylene glycol are oxalate crystals, and these oxalate crystals deposit in the tubules in your kidneys and result in renal failure, which is not a pleasant way to die.
It was compelling testimony, but the prosecution's case had one problem. There was no physical evidence that could prove Lynn poisoned anyone.
I think most prosecutors would like to have as much tangible evidence as you can have. In this particular case, we didn't really have that much.
And that wasn't the only problem the DA faced. Lynn's counsel argued that the presence of oxalate crystals in Glenn's kidneys didn't mean he was poisoned.
Some crystals are formed naturally. Our feeling was that Glenn died of cardiac dysrhythmia, that the ethylene glycol was not introduced into the body until later.
But if it was introduced later, when? The defense had a ready answer for that question.
There is ethylene glycol in some embalming fluid. The funeral home, when we were dealing with the investigation of the case, could not find the records of what embalming fluid was used.
On May 14, 2004, both sides made their closing arguments to the jury. The prosecution countered the defense's claim by reminding them that Randy's kidneys had also contained evidence of ethylene glycol.
It would be highly unlikely that 2 people would die of exactly the same poisoning and have a relationship with one woman.
But without a so-called smoking gun, the prosecution knew that anything could happen.
I was as concerned when it went to the jury about what they were going to do as I was when we started. You've got 12 people who have got to view all of the evidence the same way that you have viewed it.
After deliberating for just 5 hours, the jury announced they had reached a verdict.
We, the jury, find the defendant, Julia Lynn Womack Turner, guilty of malice murder as alleged in count 1 of the indictment.
The indebtedness, the lifestyle, all of those things that when you put all the pieces together, they basically took the place of the smoking gun.
If she was fazed by the verdict, she didn't show it.
How could someone sit there and listen to these things and have no reaction, either anger or sadness?
Lynn was led away to immediately begin serving a life sentence for the first-degree murder of Glenn Turner, with the possibility of parole in 14 years. 5 months later, in October of 2004, Lynn was formally charged with the murder of Randy Thompson. Again, the motive was to collect on life insurance.
Charging you with murder, having committed the crime of murder. How do you plead? Guilty or not guilty?
We plead not guilty, Your Honor.
Lynn's second trial began on March 12, 2007, and lasted only 12 days.
You know, it was either going to be a suicide or a homicide. We had evidence certainly to rule out a suicide, so then that left the fact that he had to be killed by someone else. Who would that be?
On March 24, 2007, a jury answered that question by finding Lynn Turner guilty of capital murder. They sentenced her to a second life sentence, this time with no chance for parole. As far as the families of her victims are concerned, prison is exactly where she belongs.
I just wanted her to be put where she could not hurt anybody else and not put another family through what she had put the Turners and us through.
Misty and Quinn Witherspoon were the quintessential small-town couple.
Misty Witherspoon was the consummate mother.
If you look in the dictionary under family man, there should be a picture of Quinn.
But even the most picture-perfect family has its problems. Raising 3 kids on a cop's salary, for instance.
Police officers don't make a whole lot on duty, but he did a lot of off-duty work.
It was just tough, and he was working a couple of extra jobs trying to pull in more money.
But the real struggle started on September 13, 2005. That afternoon, Misty Witherspoon wasn't just the consummate mom.
The call came out that a police officer had been shot.
She was also a single one. And Misty herself would show investigators exactly how it happened. Misty Keller was small town to the core.
It's just a typical North Carolina girl, goes to church on Sunday. Very friendly, almost overly friendly, always cheerful. Just what you might think of if you thought of a Southern woman.
How she met her high school sweetheart, Quinn Witherspoon, was likewise a slice of homespun Americana.
Misty was hanging out uptown in Mooresville, cruising, you know, as kids do. And she met Quinn, and they started dating.
The couple married in 1994. The following year, Quinn earned his criminal justice degree at a local college and took a job as a patrolman in the neighboring town of Concord.
Ever since he was probably about 3 years old, he always wanted to be a policeman, always.
Misty got a supervisor's job at a local factory. Off hours, the couple's free time revolved around Quinn's family church.
This church was a big part of the Witherspoon family, and when Misty married into this family, she then became a part of this church family.
Misty and Quinn's family soon had a new addition, too. And the birth of their daughter in 1998, along with Quinn's promotion to canine officer, prompted big changes. Shortly before the birth of twins in 2002, Misty quit her job and the family bought a house in Mooresville. A brick rancher with a pool out back, it was right next door to Quinn's mom and dad.
They were very close. The children got to see their grandparents all the time.
Unfortunately, the kids saw less of their father. With Misty at home and a new house payment to make, Quinn started working extra shifts and extra jobs.
He was doing off-duty work, security jobs for different businesses in Concord.
Misty, who handled the family finances, did her best to pay the bills. To help out, she also earned a few dollars doing odd jobs.
She did sell Avon, and she also cleaned some houses.
In 2003, with their oldest in elementary school, Misty also took a $200 a month job as part-time custodian and treasurer at the Witherspoons' church.
She was given signer authority on the accounts for the church, and she was allowed to write checks, and she counted money and things of that nature.
Eventually, the extra income allowed the Witherspoons to weather their financial crisis, though just barely.
I don't think they were caught up on anything. They were living day to day.
They were just a normal middle-class family, just doing whatever they can to make ends meet.
At least, they seemed normal. September 13th, 2005 was a busy day for Misty. The family was preparing to leave for a camping trip with Quinn's parents the next morning.
She was getting ready for the family trip and making some arrangements and getting stuff packed up.
Quinn, who'd worked late the night before, helped Misty put the twins down for a nap after lunch. Then he lay down on the couch to grab a little sleep before school let out.
His daughter, who goes to an elementary school just about a block away, he was going to pick her up when she finished school that afternoon.
The little girl would wait for her daddy in vain, because that afternoon, instead of his daughter's school, Quinn Witherspoon was bound for the county morgue.
Where's the 911? Where's the emergency? Yes, I was bringing my husband his gun, and I tripped and fell with it and shot. It shot? Yes, and it shot him in the head.
At around 10 after 2 on the afternoon of September 13th, 2005, while her twins slept quietly in another room and her daughter waited to be picked up from school, Misty Witherspoon called 911 and reported she'd accidentally shot her husband, Quinn.
I was bringing my husband his gun, and I tripped and fell with it and shot.
The bullet, according to Misty, had hit Quinn in the head.
Is he breathing or anything? No, it's bad.
Within minutes, Mooresville squad cars converged on the home of their brother officer. They were too late.
By the time the police got there and the ambulances got there, her husband Quinn was already dead.
When detectives arrived mere minutes after the 911 call, Misty, her elderly in-laws, and members of the Mooresville PD were milling around outside, stunned by the tragedy.
I saw Miss Witherspoon sitting on the ground outside the house. She was just sort of staring off into space. Just you could tell that she'd been crying, was upset.
Inside, detectives found Quinn's body sprawled on the couch.
He had a single gunshot wound to the back of his head right here.
On the floor was a .40 caliber Beretta, Quinn's service sidearm. The detectives tagged it as evidence. Then they started searching for the shell casing.
The shell casing should have been to the right of the couch. We searched that entire area, under the couch, around the couch. We looked everywhere.
They didn't find it until the medical examiner loaded Quinn's body onto a gurney well over an hour later.
When we rolled his body off of the couch, stuck to his right arm was the shell casing. And the medical examiner was the one that actually saw the location and saw it hit the floor.
The mystery solved, the cops added the casing to the evidence. Then, investigators stepped outside to interview Misty.
I stepped out, introduced myself to her, asked her if she'd come back with me to the police department.
That evening at the Mooresville police station, the new widow explained how the shooting had occurred.
She had slipped on a book while bringing her husband his gun and tripped and fell into him, and the gun went off and it shot him in the head.
After giving her statement, Misty went home to her children.
Several of the officers here knew her, knew him, and wanted to believe it was just an accident, that the wife of a police officer couldn't possibly shoot her husband.
But the next morning, when detectives gathered in the squad room to discuss the case, doubts surfaced about Misty's story, starting with the shell casing that somehow ended up underneath Quinn's body.
Looking at his body position, that kind of puzzled us.
Little things like that just were bugging us, gnawing at us.
That afternoon, the police went to the Witherspoon house with a proposition.
See if she would do a videotaped reenactment, and that way maybe she could explain some of these questions that we had.
Misty agreed to help. On the videotape, she explained the awful accident began when she'd gone looking for some lotion in the bathroom closet.
Her husband kept his whole gun belt in the cabinet on the same shelf.
I reached in back here to see if I was trying to find some lotion in this thing. I hit the gun belt.
According to her, The gun slipped off the shelf, fell and hit the ground.
Afraid she'd damage the gun's attached tactical sight, Misty said she'd decided to wake Quinn.
She was taking it to her husband to have him check it out to make sure that, the gun was okay.
I remember somewhere about right in here, I stepped on, I believe what was a book there. My footing went out, I did this number. When I can remember when I get to about right here, I heard it go off.
As soon as I heard that story, I'm like, no, there's no way that it happened like that.
Accidentally knocking the gun off the shelf, slipping on the book, and inadvertently pulling the trigger. If all those coincidences weren't enough, Misty also had the misfortune to fire a fatal shot.
It hit him just above and behind the ear.
The chances of hitting him in a place that's going to kill him, if it's an accidental shot, is maybe 1 chance in 100.
Quietly, investigators began questioning friends and neighbors, wondering if Misty had any motive to kill Quinn.
There's no obvious signs of any problems. There was no accusations of domestic abuse or infidelities or any of that.
The family finances, however, were a different matter. At least that's what one of Misty's friends told investigators.
She didn't know for sure, but she had suspicions that Misty was stealing from the church.
A meeting with Misty's minister confirmed her friend's suspicion.
She had been writing checks to pay her personal family bills off of the church's checking account.
In fact, for more than a year, Misty had used church funds to cover family expenses. But according to what the pastor told the cops, she'd been caught almost a year before Quinn was killed in September of 2004.
The pastor, I believe, discovered some discrepancies and went to Quinn.
The church and the family had settled the matter without going to the authorities.
Arrangements were made for Quinn to cash out part of his retirement plan to pay back the church, and for Quinn's father to make restitution.
Misty told me that when her and Quinn was talking about the money, he said, none of this is important to me. What's important is me and you. We can get rid of everything. We can let everything go back. We can do whatever.
The cops weren't so forgiving. On October 5th, 2005, Misty was placed under arrest on charges of first-degree murder.
They decided, based on the crime scene facts, that Misty was not telling the truth, that she did intend to kill him.
With Misty behind bars, the cops went back to the crime scene to search for additional evidence.
October 13th, we executed a search warrant on the home looking for financial documents.
What they found was a mass of unopened bills and overdue notices.
They basically couldn't buy, beg, borrow, or steal any more money. The house payment, the car payments, camper payments, utilities, all of which was not being made. It was a pretty grim situation.
Their financial situation was probably teetering on the edge of maybe a bankruptcy.
Then, to round out the family's financial picture, investigators dug into Quinn's insurance coverage.
He had a life insurance policy through the city of Concord.
We figured that she would have received close to $300,000.
It was more than enough cash to get the family back in the black. Coming up, Misty recants her original story and admits that the family's crushing debt did lead to Quinn's death, but it was supposed to lead to her own.
Misty originally lied about what happened because suicide is something that the community doesn't embrace.
In April of 2007, Misty Witherspoon not only stood accused of killing her husband Quinn, the mother of three also faced fraud charges stemming from her misuse of church funds.
She had embezzled a tremendous amount of money from Whitman Park Baptist Church, tens of thousands of dollars.
The church did not press charges, but the state did.
Misty had used the money, according to the indictment, to pay bills and provide for her three children.
She didn't go to Vegas, she didn't have a gambling habit, but she shopped a lot, and some people have told us that she went shopping every day, and she just could not control her spending.
On April 30th, she pled guilty to 39 separate fraud counts. But on June 28, 2007, the first day of her murder trial, the church she'd stolen from stood by her. And so did Quinn's family.
We're still behind her 100%.
Quinn's family supported Misty from day one. They never wavered.
We know that Misty's responsible, but we believe it was an accident.
And when prosecutor Alan Martin stood up to deliver his opening statement, he knew the family's support posed a serious obstacle.
That was our biggest concern, convincing the jury of, well, if the victim's mom and dad don't believe she killed him, why should I as a juror believe that she killed him on purpose?
The answer, according to the DA, lay in the family's desperate financial straits.
Those pressures led her,
and often unopened bills seized from Quinn and Misty's house.
Her mortgage payments were some 5 months in arrears. They were facing foreclosure or eviction. They had delinquencies on their credit cards.
The tipping point, according to the prosecution, was a final notice from the power company that arrived in the mail on the morning of Quinn's death.
If they did not pay their power bill, they would have their electricity cut off.
Quinn knew. Misty tried to take care of it.
While her husband slept that afternoon, Misty made a frantic phone call.
We have the phone records time-stamped that she made that phone call to a customer service representative at Duke Power.
Over the phone, she'd made a last-minute plea to contain the damage and keep the power on. She failed.
She was told, your power will be cut off tomorrow unless you pay the bill in full today, in cash.
The only way that she would have been able to pay that money was to use the money that they were going to use on their camping trip, which meant she was going to have to tell Quinn.
But telling Quinn, according to the prosecution's theory, was the last thing Misty wanted to do.
We believe that there, at some point, may have been an ultimatum. I've got you out of this mess with the church. Don't let it happen again.
But I think he told her that if she ever did this again, he was going to take the kids and boot her out.
Faced with waking Quinn, the prosecution claimed that Misty had made a desperate decision, one that would keep her husband from finding out how dire the family's financial problems were and solve those problems. According to the prosecutors, while the twins napped in the next room, Misty shot her sleeping husband in the head, dialed 911, and started covering her tracks. As proof, they played the 911 call for the jury.
I was bringing my husband his gun, and I tripped and fell with the new shot.
During her 911 call, she immediately began explaining what happened instead of saying, help, call an ambulance, my husband's hurt.
You're sitting there going, okay, when are you going to tell us that your husband's laying on the couch with a hole in his head?
When the defense started presenting its case on June 10th, Misty's lawyers didn't argue with many of the prosecution's points. They even agreed that the family's desperate finances led directly to Quinn's death. However, the scenario the defense presented revolved not around a murder, but around a suicide attempt. A failed suicide attempt. According to the defense, Misty did indeed shoot her husband, but the bullet was meant for her.
She was to the point where she was wanting to commit suicide. She just thought she would take herself out of the equation.
It was after Misty's ill-fated phone call with the power company that, as her attorney told the jury, she'd gone into the bathroom and taken her husband's gun from the holster.
She then, according to the defense, came back in and stood by Quinn Witherspoon where he lay sleeping on a sofa.
With the gun to her head, she stood over him for several minutes.
And she began praying, asking God, I guess, for strength.
Torn between pulling the trigger and telling her husband the truth, Misty was searching for a sign, according to the defense. Instead, something happened that incredibly also happened on the reenactment video she'd made for police.
Apparently, either one or more of the couple's cats jumped onto the sofa.
That startled her, and she dropped the gun And when she did, it went on her knee and the gun went off and shot him in the back of the head.
That not only made Quinn's death an accident, the defense claimed it also explained why she initially lied to the police about slipping on the book.
She didn't want people to know that she had these dark, depressing thoughts and that she had contemplated taking her own life.
Only now, according to the defense, had the true story come out. On July 12th, the defense rested without calling Misty to the stand.
There's always a risk if you're a defendant in testifying. You're going to be there on the hot seat and there's no time to think about your answer.
As the case went to the jury, the only question was, would the jurors believe Misty's new version of what happened that September afternoon? Or would they send the single mother of 3 small children to prison?
Misty Witherspoon is a married police officer's wife, mother of 3, church-going woman. You just don't know if a jury's going to be able to convict her of any crime, no matter what the evidence says.
2 days later, on July 16th, the jury returned with its verdict. They found Misty Witherspoon guilty of murder in the 1st degree.
Misty was stunned and shocked. I remember she said, well, God threw me for a loop.
Later that same afternoon, Misty was sentenced to life without parole.
We had done our job, but I don't think anybody was really happy about the circumstances. There's no glory in taking a mother away from her children.
Saturday, June 16, 2001. It was around noon on a busy Father's Day weekend when businessman Jeff Zack pulled up to the gas pumps of an Akron, Ohio wholesale club.
Next thing you know, a ninja-style motorcycle pulled up next to him.
The shooter gets off the bike, walks up to the driver's window. One shot popped in the left cheek.
Jeff Zack was dead within minutes, and by then his killer was long gone.
It was just so brazen, you know, they had to look of an organized hit.
We don't get hits in Akron, Ohio.
But the biggest shocker would come days later. The killer's trail would lead the cops to 46-year-old Cynthia George, former beauty queen, mother of 7, and wife of a well-known restaurateur.
It was pretty hard to buy that she would do something like this.
And it would turn out to be even harder to prove. Rust Belt city of North Canton.
She comes from a religious family, blue collar, working class.
After graduating from high school, the petite former cheerleader worked a variety of dead-end jobs. Then in 1978, she auditioned for a spot as a belly dancer at Tangier, Akron's acclaimed restaurant and cabaret.
It was a nightclub that over the years attracted major acts.
24-year-old Cindy's audition certainly attracted the attention of Tangier's owner, 40-year-old Ed George.
She's very vivacious and very attractive, and she just knocks him out.
Cindy got the dancing job, and 6 years later, she and Ed were married.
Trophy wife isn't necessarily fair, but she was the young, beautiful bride of a prominent businessman.
She was soon the mother of a growing family, too. Cindy and Ed had 4 children in as many years, despite the fact that Cindy's slight frame made childbirth difficult.
She had these really arduous pregnancies. Each of the pregnancies, I mean, she's like bedridden.
Even with 4 kids, the Georges wanted a bigger family. Cindy and Ed decided to adopt rather than go through another difficult pregnancy.
They adopt 2 children. So you've got this woman who, you know, within a few years of marriage, she's got like 6 kids.
A few years after the adoptions, however, Cindy was unexpectedly pregnant again. In 1994, she gave birth to her 5th child, the couple's 7th.
Cindy, by most appearances, seemed to be the perfect, you know, the beautiful wife and mother.
And in 2000, just how beautiful became official.
She enters the Mrs. Ohio beauty pageants, and she's like a 3rd runner-up.
But Cindy's bubbly beauty queen facade concealed a far uglier truth. A tawdry world of infidelity, illegitimacy, and perhaps murder. The first indication of trouble came in January of 2001, when Ed George called an acquaintance at the Akron Police Department.
He said that he and his wife were receiving harassing calls from a man.
Ed didn't name names over the phone, but the man in question was Jeff Zack, a former family friend. Zack had first met the Georges 10 years earlier at Tangier when he bumped into Cindy while ordering drinks at the bar.
He'd struck up a conversation with her, came back, introduced her to his wife.
When Cindy introduced Zack to Ed, her husband immediately took a liking to the quick-witted salesman.
He's fun to be with and he's charming. He tells a lot of stories.
Eventually, when he wasn't taking care of his vending machine business, Zack started running errands for Ed.
Zack starts out as this really friendly, helpful kind of guy.
In January of 2001, however, the friends had a falling out. Zack had become such a nuisance that Ed ended up calling the cops.
He was asking Deputy Chief Callahan what to do about it, and Major Callahan told him what to do about filing a report.
Ed, however, was reluctant to file a formal complaint.
Mr. George advised that he would work on it himself and he would call back if he needed anything else.
He never called back. But 6 months and one dead body later, the cops would come calling on Ed and Cindy. On the afternoon of June 16, 2001, Jeff Zack was gunned down execution style outside an Akron, Ohio wholesale warehouse.
This had happened in a public place in broad daylight.
But when police arrived, the half-dozen witnesses could give little information about the motorcycle-riding assassin.
One clerk who works at the booth, she actually saw the suspect calmly get on the motorcycle and take off.
He was wearing a helmet with a black shield. No one knows. The fact is, no one knows if it was a man or a woman.
All the cops had on the killer was a description of the black and green getaway bike.
It was the sport-type motorcycle. The term, I guess, is crotch rockets.
That afternoon, detectives questioned Zack's widow, Bonnie, hoping to learn whether anyone had reason to kill her husband.
She told them Jeff had been having a long-term affair with a Cynthia George.
Cindy, according to Bonnie, had broken off the affair 5 months earlier. Around the same time, Ed George had called the cops, claiming a man was harassing his wife, which for the detectives raised a lot of questions.
What was this all about? What form was the harassment taking?
Bonnie Zack offered the police a possibility. Apparently, an affair wasn't all her late husband had with Cindy George.
Bonnie Zack said he fathered one of Cindy's children.
On June 17, 2001, 24 hours after businessman Jeff Zack was gunned down outside an Akron wholesale warehouse, investigatively the murdered man's illicit lover and mother of his child.
We have a man who's having an affair with a married woman, a very prominent married woman, and our first thought is, and since it looked like a hit, that there was something there.
Ed wasn't home. But when detectives questioned Cindy George, she denied the affair and any involvement in Zack's murder.
She admitted at the time that she knew Jeff Zack, but she wouldn't say any more than that.
Police reached Ed on the phone the next day.
Ed George did confirm that it was Jeff Zack that was harassing his wife, Cindy George.
But he said nothing about the affair. Ed promised that both he and his wife would come to the station the next day to make a formal statement.
They didn't show up, but their attorneys did.
The attorneys told police the Georges were no longer interested in cooperating with the investigation.
If Ed George suspected that there was something more going on between his wife and Jeff Zack, it's hard to say.
And when the police requested a paternity test on the child, now 7 years old, to prove or disprove Bonnie Zack's allegations, they refused.
We did end up having to get that court order and having her brought into the hospital.
The paternity test confirmed what Bonnie Zak had told the cops.
Jeff Zak was the father of that baby, and eventually DNA confirming that was a shocker.
And that, as far as the cops were concerned, gave both Georges a possible motive to have him murdered.
As long as Jeff Zak was around, that skeleton in the closet would never go away.
He could go after custody of that child. And the only way for Cindy George to break free and clear of Jeff Zak is for him to be gone.
But since the Georges were silent, police had no idea whether Ed George even knew about the affair or the child.
What was actually going on in that house, I guess nobody knows but the Georges.
However, to charge either of the Georges with Zak's murder, the cops needed evidence connecting at least one of them to the mysterious assassin on the motorcycle.
The police investigated that for a full year, and at the end of the year they had nothing.
But in June of 2002, when the Akron Beacon-Journal ran an update on the one-year anniversary of the shooting, the police finally got a break. A man called in to say he had information about the killer.
He said, yeah, it's true, I'm dating a girl, and she says her ex-husband is the one who knocked off Jeff Zak.
The next day, June 17th, Akron police were knocking on her door.
And they're all showing their badges, and I just shut the door again. They're like, no, we're not here for you. We want to talk to you about your ex-husband.
Christine told the cops plenty about her ex, a truck driver named John Zaffino. Christine claimed that not long before the murder, her ex-husband had gotten into some kind of altercation with Zak. Christine also claimed that after learning that Zak had been gunned down, she'd called her ex-husband and asked if he had anything to do with it.
All I said to him was that you? And he laughed and snickered, and he said, well, let's just say the guy's going to have a hard time parting his hair from now on.
That wasn't all Christine Tadero had to say about her ex either.
I told them that he had a girlfriend, and I said her name was Cindy. And they all just kind of looked at each other.
Over the next several days, the cops confirmed that Zaffino's girlfriend named Cindy was none other than Cindy George. The two had met a year earlier at a bar.
Co-workers said that he bragged about his rich girlfriend that owned a restaurant.
A quick check of the DMV records also revealed that Zaffino had purchased a motorcycle less than a month before Jeff Zak's death.
One of our detectives went to the place where the motorcycle was purchased, and sure enough, it was a lime green, black and white motorcycle.
And so the cops would have a picture of the suspect bike. The helpful clerk even found an identical-looking bike for sale on the internet.
It was being sold out of Pennsylvania. So we had a couple detectives go out to Pennsylvania. Sure enough, the people selling the motorcycle was John Zaffino's first ex-wife.
The woman told investigators he'd shown up unannounced not long after Zak's murder and offered her the bike in lieu of some unpaid child support.
She also told us that while he was there, he had made some calls to a girl named Cindy.
On September 25th, 2002, Akron police arrested John Zaffino. Charged with first-degree murder in the shooting of Jeff Zak, the DA offered him a deal if he rolled over on Cindy George. He refused.
Zaffino was insisting that he was innocent, and he had nothing to offer the prosecution in terms of his testimony against Cindy.
Without Zaffino's cooperation, the DA didn't have enough to indict Cindy for murder. But her name certainly came up when Zaffino stood trial in February of 2003.
The theme of the case was Cindy George had a problem. Jeff Zak was a problem. John Zaffino was a solution.
Prosecutors also subpoenaed Cindy to testify.
We knew there was a connection. We knew there was a relationship. So we were going to put her on the stand.
But once she was sworn in, Cindy refused to testify for fear of incriminating herself.
She had that option of exerting her Fifth Amendment privilege.
For the jury, the fact that Cindy refused to talk may have been just as incriminating as anything she might have said. And they made their feelings abundantly clear on March 11th when they found John Zaffino guilty of murder.
They were like, yeah, John's guilty, but where's Cindy? The jury wanted Cindy George, and they were upset with the prosecution for not charging her.
Coming up, prosecutors do charge Cindy George, but that doesn't mean they can make the charges stick.
We were stunned. The evidence, in our opinion, was very strong.
The jurors who convicted John Zaffino of murder weren't the only ones who wanted Cindy George to stand trial for the crime. By the end of 2004, it seemed as if all of Akron did.
We were constantly asked that question, what are you going to do with Cindy? You just going to let her go free?
They had to really take a look at Cindy George's life and see how she was possibly connected to this murder, because John Zaffino refused to sell his lover down the river.
Finally, on January 10th, 2005, they thought they had enough evidence to make an arrest.
She was shopping with her daughters when the arrest came down. It was sudden, and I think that made it shocking.
November 14th, 2005, Cindy George walked into court to stand trial for the murder of her former boyfriend, Jeff Zack. The mother of 7, including a daughter by Zack, faced life in prison.
It's just, almost surreal. Look at a woman that at one point in her life had a storybook really existence, and yet you end up in really this tawdry scandal.
Yet despite the fact she'd cheated on him at least twice and secretly had a child with another man, when Cindy sat down at the defense table, her husband Ed was right behind her.
God bless that George for sticking with his wife, but that's certainly got to be a difficult challenge for any husband.
Cindy's tawdry past also presented a challenge for her attorneys.
You get any women on that jury, the women are not going to like Cindy George just for the fact that of her infidelity.
Which is why Cindy's attorneys had a last-minute surprise for the prosecution.
The morning of trial, her lawyer stood up and indicated that they had decided to waive the jury and try the case to the judge.
It appeared to be a smart move.
You got to remember, there's been a ton of pretrial publicity on this case. A lot of people are assuming that Cindy George is guilty.
And the evidence against her was overwhelming, according to the prosecution's opening statement. For starters, Cindy's lover, John Zaffino, had already been convicted of murdering Jeff Zack.
There's no other reason for John Zaffino to be involved in this case other than Cindy George.
Cindy, prosecutors claimed, had put Zaffino up to the hit, planned it, and even financed it. As proof, they presented the sales receipt for the getaway bike, along with the records from Cindy's bank account.
The times of the purchase, the amounts of the purchase, those coincided with Cynthia George withdrawing money from her bank in almost those exact amounts.
Cindy and John's cell phone records, according to the prosecution, followed a suspiciously similar pattern.
Zack gets popped a little afternoon, and there's a phone call Zaffino makes to Cindy George at like 11:50, and then there is another phone call that he makes at, let's say, 12:30.
Prosecutors also introduced recordings of phone calls Zaffino made from prison after his conviction. On the tapes, while discussing his appeal with family members, Zaffino made no bones about who he expected to pay for it.
Tell the Georges, write a check. All right, this is the way it's going to be, or they're going to lose their freedom.
Cindy's attorneys, however, argued that Zaffino's statements, while they sounded incriminating, didn't prove that Cindy was the one pulling the strings.
They asked the judge believe that John Zaffino acted alone.
The murder, her defense claimed, was a gift to Cindy. The love-struck Zaffino had done it on his own to help her out of a bind. But what about the motorcycle Cindy bought for Zaffino right before he killed Jeff Zack? Her attorneys argued that didn't necessarily mean she knew he was going to use it in a murder.
Did she buy the motorcycle because she wanted John Zaffino to ride up and kill a man execution style on a ninja bike? Or Was she just lavish in her presence for this man?
And while Cindy and Zaffino certainly talked on the phone a lot, the defense said there was no way that prosecutors could prove they were plotting a murder during those conversations.
Phone records don't speak. Who knows what was being said on the phone at those times? We just know that they were talking.
Confident they'd introduced enough reasonable doubt to secure an acquittal, the defense rested on November 23rd. After closing arguments, Judge Cosgrove announced she'd take the Thanksgiving holiday to reach her verdict.
She did not make a snap decision. She thought about it for days.
On November 28, 2005, Cindy George was back in court, surrounded by her family. Judge Cosgrove found Cindy George guilty and sentenced her to life in prison.
When those kids heard life in prison, they started wailing and shrieking.
It was extremely emotional. The kids were very upset.
The George family filed an immediate appeal.
One of the last things that George told me was, we're appealing, and I think we have a pretty good case here. I don't think money was much of an object, and I think the object was to get Cynthia out of jail.
At best, the appeal appeared to be a long shot.
It's highly unusual that a court of appeals would find that the judge had insufficient evidence upon which to base her decision.
But on March 21st, 2007, over a year after the conviction, an Ohio appeals court did just that, stating that the pattern of phone calls was insufficient to prove complicity. The court overturned Cindy's conviction, affirming the defense argument that Zaffino had acted alone.
It's unbelievable. I mean, no, I don't think anybody thought, even though they believed in her innocence, justice would prevail.
Or as some believe, that it could go so wrong.
She should be in jail with John. I don't think she should be with her family. She's guilty of the same crime.
One thing is certain, though, between her affairs and having another man's child, Cindy George no longer seems to be the perfect wife and mother.
Wherever she goes, there's going to be whispers, there's going to be innuendo that she got away with murder.